Hello, this is the TradeSite U.S. Stocks and Futures Market Preview and Domestic Economic Data Roadmap for the week beginning Monday, the 25th of April, 2016, ending Friday, the 29th. So this will be the end of the month of April. Friday will be month ends trading since Saturday is the 30th. Next Sunday is the 1st of May. Here's a look at the ES front month futures contract. This is the broad market S&P in futures form, which is the true way to look at the market from a technical perspective. We did get a 13 sell signal last week. We're perfectly contained so far by the risk line from that signal, which is exactly how it's supposed to work. So far that is in effect. We were up a little bit early in the week and came back down Thursday and Friday. So the ranges weren't great for the week. Pretty surprising considering it was an earnings week. A lot of big stocks reported. Let's take a look at some of the stuff we usually watch. Crude oil. Now, this is interesting. Crude oil has now got a 12 signal for the seeker. So one more candle up would get us a 13 sell signal on crude oil after, hard to believe you're getting a sell signal when you're only at 44 bucks or so. But we will. Gold is, by the way, gold had a 13 sell signal back in February, and that's still the top. But it's been contained from the downside by the static trend line of that signal. Gold lost $16 on Friday. S&P literally closed up zero point 0.1 on Friday. Not a very exciting day. The NDX, NASDAQ side with Microsoft and Google missing, down 66 points, most of it on a gap. Stocks was up 1. Stocks has been really flat now for a month. Biotech's up 8, also fairly flat, but that's near highs for the last 3 months or so. The VIX was down 73 cents to 13.22. The trend closed at 1.10. That puts the 10-day moving average at 0.95, which is not any kind of signal yet. NASDAQ volume on Friday with all the Microsoft and Google volume was 1.8 billion shares, 1.85. That was the biggest of the week, but again, it was really concentrated in those two stocks. Advanced decline ratio was positive on the NASDAQ by 712 and positive on the New York by 1267. So you had a lot more stocks up than down. It was just Google. Here's Google down 42 for the day. This puts it in line. It's still pretty narrow range for the year on Google so far. Apple lost 22 cents. By the way, let's go back to Google, see the volume, how high that volume was. That's what helps make the NASDAQ volume looks big for the day, but it was just that. And here's Microsoft, which was also down a little bit, but look at the volume there. So those two stocks accounted for all the extra volume that we saw on Friday. Amazon down $10.50. Netflix up 92 cents after dropping earlier in the week. And that's about it. All right, let's take a look at the intra-day action for the week. This is 10-minute candles. So you can see coming into Monday, we had gapped down, shot up. We had a big morning there on the futures, and then drifted higher the rest of the day. Tuesday, we gapped up, went higher, then came back to fill the gap and closed about middle range for the day. Wednesday, flat opening, shook both ways early, rose up to set the high of the week. We were testing the risk line from that daily chart sell signal I showed you, and then rolled over and closed about flat. Thursday, gapped down a little, came up to fill the gap, and then rolled a bit. Friday, basically a flat opening on the S&P and a flat close after dipping a little bit lower. NASDAQ side, slightly different story, especially on Friday because of Google and Microsoft. All right, so let's take a look at the data coming out this week and get ourselves focused. We still have a lot of stocks reporting earnings. Usually we talk about the 8 days of core earnings every quarter, and it ends with the Thursday that Microsoft reports. But this year, things are kind of shifted. So even though Microsoft's done and we had a lot of earnings this last week, there's still plenty on the table this week, so just be aware of that. Monday, we've got new home sales 30 minutes into the market. Tuesday, durable orders, Case-Shiller 20-city index, consumer confidence is 30 minutes in. And then we start a 2-day Fed meeting, so be aware of that. Wednesday, we've got the MBA mortgage index, pending home sales, crude oil inventories, and then the Fed announcement at 2 in the afternoon, Eastern time. Thursday, big number in the gross domestic product. The first look at first quarter's GDP. That's a big number an hour before the bell on Thursday. And then natty gas 30 minutes in. We also have the weekly initial claims number before the bell. And then Friday, we've got core PCE prices, employment cost index, personal income and spending, Chicago PMI, and Michigan sentiment. So obviously, a couple things to keep in mind. The big thing is the Fed and that GDP number. Be aware of all the earnings, check earnings before you hold anything, or again, stocks in the sector reporting can affect other stocks that you might be looking at. Friday, even though there's a lot of data, I would expect Friday to die off pretty quickly because it is end of month. So it's not end of quarter, but end of month, you still get a lot of window dressing for the statement prints. So I would think if we're going to have better trading days this week, Wednesday and Thursday. Well, Wednesday's got the Fed announcement. Monday could be okay. Tuesday, maybe fine, and then slow down a bit because of the Fed. Wednesday, you wait for the Fed, and then we'll see after that. Thursday, probably the big day of the week. Friday morning, there's enough data for something to get started, but then it'll probably die off. Charts as usual brought to you by eSignal 12. If you've not yet taken a trial of our services, feel free to do so. We'll help you out. Have a great week.